God creates dinosaurs. We've got the Sad Boys Book Club here. God kills dinosaurs.
It's a Unix system. I know this.
God creates man.
Dusty and Daniel were so preoccupied with whether or not they could.
Man creates podcasts. I'm sick of saying that, but life finds a way.
They didn't stop to think of they should.
God kills man.
So, nice weather we've been having, huh?
No, actually, it's been hell. It's been in the hundreds like every day this week, and the past week too. We don't all have the privilege of beautiful Midwestern summers, brother.
Well, yeah, I've just been chilling in my 80s to 90s tropic summer.
Honestly, at this point, I would take 80s to 90s. And I'm not that guy, but I would take that over. Like this is the weather that it was in like that little hothouse that they were growing the baby dinosaurs. This is exactly what it's like. It's like the temperature's like 100, the humidity's like 85. It is terrible. It is the worst.
Yes. Take a trip back 65 million years to a prehistoric time where everything was worse and everything sucked. Just visit Texas.
For real though. You come back here, sometimes it feels like you're going 65 million years back into the past.
Welcome to the Sad Boys Book Club. My name is Dusty.
And I'm Daniel.
And neither of us are government-sponsored meteorologists.
Yeah. Our training is not in meteorology, but rather dinosaur cloning and literary analysis.
Yes. Jurassic Park.
So, how are you liking the second part of Jurassic Park so far?
Well, it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, just a lot of like plot happening. Characters are learning things, and we're learning things about the characters, and we had like a small amount of action happen. It's just, just really, really terrible stuff.
Yeah, things happening. I hate when things happen in books. It makes me viscerally angry.
Yeah.
I had to buy another copy of Jurassic Park because I was so angry after one character died that something had actually happened. Stakes had actually occurred in my book. I was so angry. I just tore it in half, and it was actually a hardback version that I just like Hulk Hogan that thing in half.
I don't know if Hulk Hogan's one for tearing things in half, brother. You might be thinking of like Lou Ferrigno with the Hulk.
Yeah, probably.
Because Hulk Hogan is known for his pro-American attitude and his leg drops.
I'm very much enjoying the book. I think, like on a page-to-page basis, this is the most fun book that we've read, at least from my perspective. Like, it's just, I don't know, say what you will about Michael Crichton as, like, I don't know that this is, like the most highbrow literature that we've done or will do, but it's just, he knows how to tell a really good and engaging story about dinosaurs.
Yeah, if we're talking like page to page, moment to moment kind of things, I think for me, I still have to give that to Leviathan Wakes. But I mean, everybody who's been following us consistently at this point should know that that book hit different for me. So, but I mean, as I've said last time, Jurassic Park is one of my favorite books. So I mean, yeah, I have so much fun reading it.
Definitely. So, let's see. Where were we last time when we left off?
The last thing that we covered was sorry, I forgot the girl's name again for a second. Was Tim and Lex arriving on the island?
Okay. Yeah, we couldn't remember her name last time too. I think.
Yeah. To just do like a broad overview real quick, just to kind of throw down the bullet points of what we covered for this week. This week was their tour of the facility, their tour of the island, and everything starting to go wrong.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely the case.
If you're watching the movie, it's basically take from when the kids come in the movie, and the last thing that we're really covering in the book relative to the movie is Dennis Nedry and the aftermath of the T-Rex encounter. There you go. There's your frame of reference if you've seen the movie.
All right, so the kids have arrived, and we got Tim and Lex, and we kind of see their characters pretty quickly. So Tim, he's like the dino nerd who really looks up to Dr. Grant, and his sister Lex is basically her defining trait through like most of this part of the book so far is being an archetypical little sister character and being a Mets fan. Like every third sentence is like, "Hey, do you want to play catch or pickle or whatever?" Whatever the. I actually don't know what pickle is, so I assume it's some sort of baseball-oriented thing.
Yeah, either that or
anyway,
I'm hungry.
Oh, she says I'm hungry. Like, I said she wants to play catch every third sentence. Every other sentence is I'm hungry.
Yeah, which I think she's like 8 to be fair. So.
But yeah, that's kind of what I mean. It's like she's just like, again, Michael Crichton, very good writer overall, but sometimes he kind of leans hard into some certain tropes. But anyway, so Tim and Lex they land, and they are introduced. They're introduced by Ed Regis, who is the sort of like the
public relations.
I was trying to find the right word, but yeah, public relations guy for Jurassic Park, and he's the guy that basically is going to be taking Dr. Grant, Dr. Sadler, and I was gonna say the other experts, but the only other one is Dr. Malcolm. But anyway, he's the one that's going to take them on their guided tour around Jurassic Park. And so they as they set off, there's a little bit of a back and forth between Dr. Grant and Tim, where Tim is able to recite some like moderately arcane dinosaur facts, which Dr. Grant finds impressive, and so they kind of have like this burgeoning, maybe not quite father-son, but we're getting some like Uncle Magic vibes,
Yeah, which is a difference between the book and the movie, because in the movie Grant hates kids, and it's only through the course of surviving in the park that he actually comes to appreciate Tim and Lex, whereas in the book it even says Grant loves kids because of how easily they become fascinated to and cling to dinosaurs. It's not kind of like a kindred spirit, it's just, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's so easy for kids to be into the same things that I'm into, specifically with dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are so wondrous to kids that I can't help but like kids because of that reason.
Hold on, I need to talk about, while we're talking about that, Dr. Grant had this really bizarre take, like when it was talking about that part of things. He was like, I think kids like dinosaurs because dinosaurs remind them of their parents.
That was weird, yes. I don't understand that
was
personally.
A certified insane quote from Dr. Grant. It's just like, what are you talking about? If your parent reminds you of like a T-Rex, you need therapy. And I'm not a therapy guy, but like, you need therapy. if your initial reaction is like, my parent is like a terrible lizard, you need to do some introspection is in order. And also, maybe something to be done about your parent. that is not good if they are parenting you and they're acting like a T-Rex. Stay out of the oven.
I can only speak for myself in saying when I was a kid and I thought dinosaurs were neat, a lot of it was because of just how big and cool and scary they looked, and also because of, ironically enough, Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me it was 100% the cool factor. I didn't find them scary per se because I was like, well, they've been dead for millions of years, so I didn't figure that was anything to worry about. I was much more worried about things like quicksand, for example. And but anyway, so Dr. Grant, he's kind of palling around with Tim a little bit, and Lex also has like a semi, I don't want to say relationship with Ed Regis, but like he indulges her and her desire to do like catch more than the other adults, which are more focused on their mission.
Well, he does the first time. The second time, it's Gennaro that plays catch with her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Well, never mind. Lex is kind of the outsider then, I suppose.
I think it's more probably the adults just being like, I gotta indulge this little girl so she'll shut up.
That is definitely the vibe you get as this section of the book goes on. But anyway, they're going through the park, and they get to the control room where, Regis is kind of giving them the rundown, and he's like, basically the park runs itself, and we have only a skeleton crew here, which again, very timely aspect of the book. There is like this idea of like a lean staff and trying to like automate everything versus like trying to like staff up for things. It's very very prescient of this moment, I would say. So they're in the control room. They meet a couple of the key figures that work for the company. They meet John Arnold, who is kind of like I describe him as an engineer. He basically is kind of like the boss of like the computer system stuff and I guess probably some engineering stuff, but that hasn't really come to play yet so far in the book. But he basically he seems like he's just in charge of computer stuff. And the park warden, Robert Muldoon, who is like this really weird hunting guy who's like, I don't know, he was like this big game hunter turned like conservationist and like wildlife consultant. He's kind of a, go ahead.
He's like if Van Pelt from Jumanji wasn't evil.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. He's like if Clayton was like less evil from Tarzan.
Yeah,
generally the same. That archetype of character.
Muldoon is sitting there pulling a grant, pointing at a picture, going like, "Velociraptor."
Yeah. The next up is Dr. Henry Wu, who is like the lead geneticist for the Jurassic Park. Their whole project is basically under his leadership. And as they go through, they meet him, and he kind of walks them through their DNA process, which seems right-ish. It's the classical. I don't know if that's right, but I don't know enough about DNA to dispute that.
Yeah, like burning trash and turning it into stars.
Exactly. And that's basically the sense you'll get through that portion of the book. But it sounds right enough that I unless you're like really into this stuff, you're probably not going to get hung up on it. Anyway, just to give you like a little overview of like what they're doing. Essentially, what they do is they take like these fossils, they grind them up, which sounds like an extreme waste, but apparently they can somehow extract a certain amount of DNA.
It's at about 20%.
Yeah, and then the rest they get from, And I thought this was kind of ingenious, if implausible. But you might recall from the previous section we talked about how Hammond has been stockpiling amber and was now the world's, like, he had the biggest supply in the world. Well, this is kind of paid off here when Wu explains that what they're doing is they're going through the DNA and they're like finding parasitic insects like a mosquito or whatever, and they're just extracting the preserved blood that is inside of the insect. And then they kind of put the DNA into a gene sequencer, and according to this bit, they talk about how they use they use the computer system to compare it against like other like closely related strands to kind of like fill in the gaps. But we might find that there's maybe another thing that they're doing to fill in gaps later. I guess there's a little bit about and then there's a little bit about Nedry, and he's kind of there. He's basically described as being a slob, and that Michael Crichton has like, you can tell which characters he likes. Nedry is like is maybe the character he likes least. He is constantly deriding him as like a slob and just a lout of the highest order generally. So anyway, after that they go into the fertilization room, and they're looking at how they're putting the DNA in. What were they putting? What were the eggs? They were some kind of lizard. Was it like monitor? No, it was a crocodile, right?
No, they were just plastic eggs.
Huh.
They were injecting the embryos into plastic eggs.
That's right. They had like a fake plastic egg, and wasn't there like a fake womb type thing?
It's basically the room. The fertilization room is like a giant incubator.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what it is. Anyway, so they create the dinosaurs in there using the eggs, or the fake eggs, and then they go. Once they move the eggs into the hatchery room, where, as we mentioned before, they have like it's really hot and extremely humid in there, and so they basically and they have people like sifting through the eggs, and they have, however many survive. I think it was like less than 10%, something pretty low. Like they have a very low. Oh, go ahead.
I want to say they said it was 4%.
That sounds right. I didn't want to like shoot too low, but it was basically very few of the dinosaurs actually survived the hatching process.
Which
anyway,
it makes sense.
I mean, it does make sense, especially because it's like not a real egg. The conditions are only being approximated, not like actually replicated. So it definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Then they move on to the nursery, where they see this technician with a baby velociraptor, who sounds actually astonishingly cute. I must say, this is a very cute section.
Yeah. If I could have a pet infant velociraptor, like 6 weeks old or however old they said it was, and it stay forever with that temperament and that physicality, that'd be cool. Like, no teeth. I imagine it still probably has its claws, but they're probably more akin to, I would assume, a cat, maybe. And it's I think they said that it was about the size. It was like a foot long or something like that, about the size of a cat. That'd be rad.
Like a foot long. It was like a foot long, a foot and a half tall, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Imagine that.
I mean, you could pull like a Chris Pratt, and then like train it, and then become friends. I don't know. Anyway, so they basically the dinosaur, he's being cute and everybody's oohing and awing over him, and the dinosaur takes a liking to Tim. He like jumps onto Tim and just kind of wants to hang out with him. Generally being more sociable than we would associate with any kind of reptile or lizard or even most avians, I would say.
And then we have Grant at probably his like probably his worst moment in the entire book. Just like basically takes the raptor from Tim and is just like looking it over and holding it upside down. It's screaming and crying, and he's like, I must investigate you. He's basically treating it like he's Cole Phelps. And they're like, Grant, stop it.
I felt like that too. I was like, dude, what are you doing? I'd forgotten about that part, but I was like, what are you doing? Don't hurt the thing. It's
and he's like, I'm not hurting it. He's like, I'm not hurting it, but like, I feel like if it was a true, actual Velociraptor from, I don't remember if they say what period the Velociraptor's from. I don't remember if it's Jurassic or Cretaceous or whatever. I don't know. I don't know that stuff very well. But I imagine if it was one actually like from its time that was created naturally, he could probably do that and it would be fine. But the thing they point out as to why they made such a big deal about him doing that was stress and like external forces could actually lead to, it's basically the dinosaur equivalent of SIDS, it feels like.
That is that is a good point. I didn't really mention this there, but that's basically something that is constantly happening as they're going through this part of the book. They're like, it's like, oh, but please don't touch anything. Please don't touch, please, because they're, you know, we kind of briefly touched on it, but like, they have a very, very low survival rate. So anyway, after this, they kind of get back to the control room, and Malcolm is kind of you can kind of see at this part of the book. This is like when Malcolm's kind of getting in his bag. He kind of goes from being kind of a weird and I don't know, like his interaction with Dr. Sadler was. It really kind of threw me off, to be honest. I was not vibing with him, but like here he starts to do things that make him, if not necessarily likable, more like he becomes his expertise is becoming relevant.
One thing I find funny about Malcolm is every single time they show them something, his response is always, and yes, this proves exactly why this is why I'm right, and this is why this is going to fail. And they're like, how so? And he's like, because it exists. And it's like every single time they show them the computer system. Oh, that's why it's going to fail. They show him the incubation process and all that. Oh, that's why it's going to fail. And it's like, it's not that he's wrong. It's just funny that every single thing he's just like, haha, further proof to my cause.
Basically, he's like, computers, He's like you can very easily just kind of feel the Jeff Goldblum, like reading his character. It's like the role of Malcolm was perfectly cast in the film.
Yeah, he's just like, I see you only have grape Fanta in your vending machine. Yes, this is proof enough that this is going to fail. Ooh, what's that? No Granny Smith apples in your fruit bowl. Ooh, yes. Oh, that's bad. Oh, chaos theory shows that your park is gonna die now.
You see, the Granny Smith apple did not exist in the Cretaceous era, and so according to chaos theory, that means that the dinosaurs are going to start losing their minds. But anyway, they're going to the control room, and Malcolm's is talking to Wu, and he's kind of pressing him for details because Wu is a previous thing that he's walking through, while like broadly impressive, like has like some important things that have been omitted, and they kind of drill him into him a little bit here, and they say Malcolm specifically asks how many species they've made so far, and Wu. And this is an important thing here. Wu thinks it's 15. Which is like, what? What do you mean think? That's kind of like one of the first hints, at least on this specific tour, that there's something kind of going on.
Yes, you seem to be very knowledgeable for your craft and seem to be doing a great job here and hit some marvels of discoveries that science has never seen before. Wow, fantastic, great job. This is disastrous to the cause.
They basically he also asks um, he asks about the compies and like that because there was that's the reason he's basically out here is because if you remember from the previous episode, the what they believed to be an escaped compy was recovered on the shore in Costa Rica. So they kind of talk a little bit about them and they're part of the ecology of Jurassic Park, and it basically is like. So basically, there's a lot of these dinosaurs here. How are you able to keep track of everything? How is it possible that they can escape? And the Dr. Wu is very adamant, like no, they can't because they are incapable. We've specifically engineered them to be incapable of producing some sort of enzyme that basically
Lysine,
they need. Yeah, that sounds right. They need to. They basically have to get lysine as like a supplement that they are receiving on the island. Otherwise, they will go into a coma within 12 hours after leaving the island. Additionally, they have thrown in this. I don't know if they talked about it here. They probably talked about it in the section before, and I just didn't mention it. But another thing that he mentions is that all of the dinosaurs are supposed to be female. That was their decision when breeding and cloning these dinosaurs is to have an all female population. Anyway, so they are as they're leaving or they're getting ready to leave. There's a what is it called? There's like a supply ship that's coming in, and the control room is trying to talk to them, and kind of while that happens, that's kind of put a pin in that in your thoughts because that's going to become more relevant later. It's just kind of like a little bit of a foreshadowing moment. And they talked a little bit more to Wu about like what the dinosaur development process is, and they're talking about how they basically Sattler and Grant start to have a little bit of questions like how are you measuring success? How are you making the decisions to like for the development of the dinosaurs, that kind of thing. And they also talked to them about adult raptors, and they do have them in the park, but they're like not they're not ready to be shown yet. They're in a temporary enclosure. Anyway, so the tour with that, they're kind of wrapping up the tour. This is when Lex and Regis play catch, and then Grant, Dr. Malcolm, Dr. Sattler, and Tim go to see the raptors.
Yeah. So yeah, Grant wants to see the actual raptors because they're not in the park proper. They're being held still because they're having issues getting them acclimated into the park proper because, velociraptors are kind of dangerous. Shocker, I know. So yeah, they're told, yeah, you can go see them. You got to go around to the back of the facility. You can see their containment places there, yada yada. So Malcolm wants to go with, and Tim wants to go with. So the three of them go around. They're looking, and they're like, oh, where are the raptors at? But then Grant sees one, and it's just poking its head through, just barely, not moving, staring at them through the trees. I love this. It slowly takes its arm and moves the brush away, just kind of like it's peeking out. Like that's some sinister imagery right there. Like great job with Crichton building that tension there with just them being essentially stalked by a rapper and Eminem in the bushes staring them down. Them being stalked by a raptor, and Grant even makes a note saying, "Oh wow, they're hunting us," and then suddenly they get jumped from both sides by other raptors. being part of this ambush, because that first one was actually just drawing their attention, but fences are a thing, so they jump into the fences, get shocked, whatever, and Grant's just like, holy shit, wow, that was crazy. That's some crazy intelligence on those raptors. And Malcolm's questioning him about that, being like, oh, hey, what was that about? And Malcolm talks about how it's unusual for a raptor like that, or not necessarily a raptor specifically, but normally with meat-eating predators, humans aren't a part of their diet. They're not a part of their hunting patterns until it is introduced to them in some manner, and then after that, that's when they actually learn to hunt humans. They don't do it naturally, and he said that he assumes that raptors are the same, especially since there were no humans around when the raptors existed. So he's just like, I wonder what happened to cause these raptors to have a taste for humans. That's disconcerting. And if you remember one of the prologues of the book, that you can kind of see where that came from. So that's their first encounter. Yes, their first encounter with the raptors, which is cool. We get to see the raptors, and Grant gets to marvel at them because he's obsessed with the raptors because he was digging the one out in Montana or whatever at the start of the book, and fun little bit with that. And so also putting some more seeds of things about to go bad, and we're getting all of these little puzzle pieces that we're putting together as to see why the park fails piece by piece. So they go back, and it's at this point I think that they actually start the tour proper for the park itself. Is that right?
I think that's right. Is the part with with John Hammond and Dr. Wu before or after that?
You mean when they're in his bungalow?
Yeah.
Or when they're talking about the hymns version 4.4?
That, I think, the version 4.4.
I think that's like somewhere. I think that's somewhere like in between.
Okay, well you can go ahead. Never mind. You can go ahead and start up on the tour.
Something I should mention though before the tour, while they were in the control room, they learned how they keep track of all the dinosaurs through motion sensors and cameras that will count the dinosaurs, and they have a system where it has this chart, and it's like it'll say it expects to find 2 Tyrannosauruses. It found 2 Tyrannosauruses. It expects to find 8 Velociraptors. It finds 8 Velociraptors, and does that for all 15, and it comes out to 238 dinosaurs. And they're like, yeah, this is how we know that this is how we know for certain that none have gotten off the island, because every 5 minutes it's updated to show us that there are 238 dinosaurs on the island. And if that ever changes, we immediately get alerted to it. So we will know immediately if a dinosaur gets off the island. Obviously, we know at this point that's not there's a flaw in that somewhere, because the compy or compies, actually there are multiple compies in San Jose or along the coast. So that's important that happens. But now they're going on the tour itself. They get into their little Land Rovers, and they're going through on their tours. Tim wants to sit with Grant because, I have your book, I know you, you're awesome. But the adults need to talk about adult things, so you get to ride with Ed Regis and your sister in the back car. And it goes, if you've seen the movie, it's very similar to how it kind of goes a little bit, but we get a lot more. If you look to your left, you'll see this dinosaur, and there's a moment Ed Regis is talking about, because there's like an automated tour guide that's giving little tidbits of knowledge of each part they pass, what dinosaur lives there, little details about that dinosaur in particular. And I forgot the name of the person, that it's like Richard Kelly or something like that. I could be way off on the name, but I feel like that's kind of close. I don't know if that's a real person. It's probably some famous person. and like they got him to do the voice for the automated tour guide, and Ed Regis says one of my favorite lines from the movie, but it's only associated with Ed Regis in the book. After he says that they got this dude to voice it, spared no expense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made a note of that in my book, or in my notes when I was reading the book.
Yeah. So yeah, Hammond spared a lot of expenses, but not in that situation, I guess. And yeah, so they're seeing some of the dinosaurs. They're not seeing some of the others because they're shy or whatever. At one point, as they're going through one of the enclosures, and they see like one of the dinosaurs, Tim sees something quickly go across the field, and he's like, "Whoa, that's a velociraptor! I saw it. There's a raptor." And Grant's like, "Are you sure?" Because they can communicate via the cars. The cars have like walkie-talkies and radios, so they can all hear each other talking between the cars. And Grant's like, "Are you sure it was a raptor?" He's like, "Absolutely. It was about, he said it was about 3 feet tall. It looked exactly like the one that I held. So, if anyone's going to know what a raptor looks like at this point, it's probably going to be Tim because he got to hold a baby." And he's like, "Yeah, it definitely was bigger than the one that I held, but it was smaller than the one that we saw in the gate outside. Also, they saw raptors outside, so they definitely they know what to look for with raptors." And of course, back in the control room, they're like, "Oh, well, it's probably just one of the tree climbing dinosaurs. I forgot what they're called, like Othio somethings or whatever. Because those are hard to keep track. It's probably just one of those. Stupid kid, haha." So yeah, it was definitely a raptor, by the way. Just saying. They're continuing on the tour. They get to the T-Rex part of it, and they're looking for the T-Rex. Regis is like, they're normally nocturnal. Or no, the raptors are nocturnal, sorry. It's like the T-Rex is actually kind of shy. So, they pulled, it's kind of similar with the movie with the goat, but instead of it being a crane, it's something that comes out of the ground and it's tethered to a post. And we actually do see the T-Rex come out. And it comes out, it kills it, and Grant notes that its behavior is similar to that of like a bird snapping its head around looking for any potential predators that are going to come for its kill, because that's the thing about predators that we've discovered in recent times, is that it's more so that because of how hard it is to kill prey and have a meal, as soon as predators kill them, they're suddenly even more alert than they were before, because they don't want their fresh kill stolen by other predators that are also hungry. So the Rex is doing that, and then it takes a bite, and then eventually just kind of takes its meal and goes. So they saw the T-Rex, woo. And then tour keeps going, and then we get to the Stegosauruses, and this is where the local, like the on-island veterinarian, I think his name's Dr. Harding. He's working on a Stegosaurus who he has anesthetized because it's sick. And Ellie and Grant are like, "Well, we got to go take a look at this." Ellie especially, because she's a paleobotanist and she knows this is kind of a lot more where her expertise is compared to someone like Grant. So this is the film equivalent scene to when they see the sick dinosaur, and Grant lays on its stomach as it breathes, and they see the big old that's a big pile of shit. That scene. This is that equivalent. So they're trying to figure out, Ellie's helping the doctor trying to figure out what might be causing the Stego to be sick, because they're only getting sick in intervals of every 6 weeks, and it can't be this poisonous berry that is absolutely poisonous and causes the symptoms that the Stego is having, because the Stegos aren't eating those plants. They know better to not eat them, but it's still having those symptoms. And they find these smooth rocks, what do they call them, gallstones?
Yeah, something like that.
And it's basically, it's basically rocks that some birds will put in their gizzard that'll help them break up their food. And they find a bunch of piles for it's the Stegosaurus doing that, because the Stegosaurus also have gizzards that they put the stones in to help with digestion and breaking down the food and whatnot. But she finds that is how they're getting sick, is because some of the berries from that plant are getting picked up along with the rocks, and that's what's causing it. So, woo, problem solved. But also, Grant finds a piece of a dinosaur egg, and he brings it back, and he's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe it! It's a dinosaur egg." and he's like, Harding's like, that. There's no way there can't be a dinosaur egg. And Grant's like, look at it. I've found fragments of these eggs. It's my job to find these things. I have found them in my time. I know an egg when I see one. This is a velociraptor egg. And of course, back in the control room, John Hammond and Arnold and we were just like, no, it's just a bird egg. It has to be a bird egg. There's no way. But now Grant and Gennaro and Malcolm and Sadler and all of them are now convinced that, well, no, these dinosaurs are breeding. So, So then,
actually, I thought about that. Did we miss the portion where they're talking about when they find the flaw in the software in the control room? That also kind of prefigured this idea.
That's immediately following. That's him.
Okay.
That's Malcolm, like, in response to the egg.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Now they found the egg. It's like, oh, there has to be ways that they're breeding, and Grant's like, we have to find their breeding sites. I think he says there's at least 8. That's in a minute. I'll get to that in a second. So Grant says there has to be breeding sites, and Malcolm, who's now talking to them in the control center, is like, hey, do me a favor. You know that thing you're running that shows 238 dinosaurs? Have it run for 239. So Arnold does it, and lo and behold, it pulls up 239. There's now one more copy on the list than there was before. He was like, that's strange. So then he's just like, hey, Malcolm's like, hey, run it again, but this time check for 300 dinosaurs. And much to their horror in the control room, it keeps going and going and going and going until there's an error.
That is such a great...
Yeah.
That was a great horror moment.
Yeah, the way that it's formatted in the novel, it's really good.
You see the printout, the computer printout of like the species, the dinosaur identified, the expected, found, and the version numbers of the dinosaurs, and it's actually really, really cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool way that it's told in the book. And eventually it errors out, like 300 not found, and John Hammond's like, haha, I told you, but then it's like 292 found. And there's 8 dinosaurs that have variances in terms of their expected total and their actual total. And the one that, like, I looked at it and I obviously I forgot about this kind of detail since it's been like 6 or 7 years for me since I listened to the audiobook. You look, and especially since I'm listening to the audiobook. I don't even think in the audiobook they read out the details in the graph. I think they just read the text only and skipped the graphs completely. But you look at the graph, and I just kind of leaned back and was like, holy shit, because it's Velociraptors expected count 8, total count 37. It's like, ooh, yeah, shit.
That was a very I've never that is a very interesting piece of writing to feel like that feeling of fear, so to say, like that horror feeling, and you're just looking at like a data table.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, it's something that it's something that obviously can't be done as well in the movie, and the movie doesn't really focus on the raptors as much, not until the climax. But just like seeing that and thinking, oh geez, there are 29 raptors in the park, not the 8 that are caged up that Muldoon has essentially separated. There are 29 in the park proper, running around doing things, and even Grant's just like, one thing we don't know for certain either is because like one of their diets for raptors is eating the eggs of other dinosaurs. So he's like, we can't tell for certain how accurate these numbers really are, because for all we know, there could be a bunch of eaten. We can't tell for certain how many nests there truly are. He thinks there's about 8 nests, and that's based off of how many variances there are from the expected and the total amount. And I think there are 5 species that don't match. The raptors are the highest. No, I think the compies are the highest. I think compies have there's 30 plus extra compies, but that's just they're kind of small fries. But he comes out.
But also kind of goes to give the theory of give credence to the theory of the compies have escaped.
Yeah,
they had no idea that their number was off by like a third.
Yeah, and the thing that Grant says that he's like, we can't be certain if some have escaped, but we can know that it's possible that if they did escape, you didn't pick them up in the system. And the only way to really kind of know is to find the breeding sites and essentially get a note of how many eggs there are in each of these breeding sites, so that we can extrapolate to get an idea if that 292 actually is accurate. And it wouldn't be perfect, because there's no way to tell, with dinosaurs that have been killed or eaten or whatever, or eggs that have been eaten. It's not going to be an exact thing, but at the very least they could try and see how close that 292 is to the truth. So yeah, needless to say, that causes a lot of issues.
Yeah. And then the next thing they talk about, it's a little less interesting and a little more arcane, but they talk about how there's like a graph of like the distribution of like height, the height of the compies, and it gives a what they refer to as a Gaussian distribution, and that's basically they're like, see, that's perfectly normal. That's what it's supposed to be, but Malcolm is like, yes, you fool! Don't you know that because of your methods that it should not be that way? That is the graph of a normal population, not an artificial population. And that was another thing that was so basically that Muldoon is starting to freak out.
Rightfully so.
Yes, Muldoon is one of the few people on the side of, I'm gonna just say on the side of Jurassic Park that really and truly kind of has an appreciation for what's going on here.
Yeah.
And
we didn't state it, but Muldoon was of the opinion, he mentions it earlier when we're kind of getting his general introduction, that he thinks the raptors should be destroyed completely. He doesn't think the raptors should be in the park at all. He thinks they're too dangerous. They're essentially a major liability, and he thinks it's better to kill them off completely and not even fuck around with that, as opposed to just letting them exist.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I'm against this project just in general, but it's, even if I was like even if I was an InGen person, I would have to agree with that assertion.
I feel like you can make a decent argument with the technology being there to have a park for the herbivores. Like, it's outside of accidents that, like being stepped on or something, which that's something that would probably be more that person's fault than the dinosaur's fault. With herbivores, you don't have any of these dangers. Everything that happens in all of the Jurassic Park movies, in the book, it doesn't matter. It all stems from the carnivores. They're the problem. They're the danger. Get rid of the T-Rexes. Get rid of the Dilophosaurus. Get rid of the Velociraptors. Get rid of the Procompsognathids. Just keep the herbivores. You got a park. It's good. Like, anything that goes wrong, no, oh no, the herbivores are mingling. Ooh, like, nothing bad's gonna happen. Extremely. It's only because of the dangerous carnivores that things go to shit. So, just get rid of them. I guarantee you, Joey from New York, who's spending his dad's trust fund money to fly down to an island 100 miles off the coast of Costa Rica to see some dinosaurs, yeah, he might be disappointed that there won't be a T-Rex there, but I'm sure once he sees the other dinosaurs, he ain't gonna really care so much. He'll be like, wow, Mom, look, a Triceratops. This is the best vacation ever. Like,
Yeah. I just can't get over the idea. I just find it to be just a bad idea. I'm not really, like, super... I don't know. I wouldn't regard myself as a particularly spiritual person or anything, but it's just... There's something that seems innately wrong about resurrecting these species. It just feels...
It's playing God.
It's hard for me to put my finger on it exactly, but it just, like... This just feels bad. Like, I would definitely not be in support of this.
Yeah, and it's something they even talk about, too, with just how much maintenance goes into the upkeep for the dinosaurs themselves. While I'm reading it, I'm thinking, man, this is remarkably unsustainable.
Yeah. That is, as Malcolm continues to somewhat gleefully point out, like, at every turn, like, there is so many... They thought of everything, and then immediately, with like mild scrutiny, everything starts falling apart.
Yeah. Which, to backtrack just a smidge, because this is important to point out, when they're talking to the control center, it's like Hammond, Arnold, and Wu are there, and they're talking about the eggs and how all of this happened. Grant asks if what kind of DNA they used to fill in the gaps when there were any in the dino DNA, and Wu's like, oh, we used birds and reptiles and whatnot. And Grant's like, did you use any amphibians? And he's like, I'd have to go and check. And so Grant's like, if you used some frog DNA, you'll get your answer as to why they're able to breed. Which, if anyone's seen the movie, it's because the frogs are able to essentially, they can change their gender at will in order to adapt to breeding troubles. So nature's pretty rad like that. And that's why Grant is asking specifically about amphibian or frog DNA.
Yeah, that is an interesting little thing there. I actually didn't know that there were species like that until this, but that's an interesting little thing that they include there. And also, just come on, Wu, like, how could this have slipped by someone whoever was, Wu ultimately bears responsibility, but like whoever's idea it was to start like slipping frog DNA into the mix, let's go. I'd like to know the thought process there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like there are plenty of issues, mostly down to the genetic level, as to why this park cannot succeed long term. The short-term reason, and the reason why this book exists in the way that it does, is 100% because of Dennis Nedry. None of the major issues that the characters face in the book itself would have happened if not for him. Nedry is the reason why this book goes the way it goes. But, like I said, it's really more so the issues that are just because of this project in the first place, or as to why that it was destined to fail. It's just Nedry was that little push that made it happen sooner than it would have naturally.
He was the kerosene in a match factory.
Yeah. So
also, last little bit here before we move on, just one little twist of the knife, as it were, and also another, like, what is wrong with you people? How are you so lackadaisical? There was initially a very bad rat problem on the island when they initially landed and started, putting things together. That rat problem mysteriously vanished after a few months.
After a few months of the dinosaurs being incorporated.
Yeah, and it's like nobody thought to nobody that didn't trigger any kind of alarms, that nobody thought to follow up anything about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of Jurassic Park is hubris.
Yeah, and Wu the whole time is like just be like, but no, they're females. They can't breed, and it's just over and over. Like he's just completely like so stuck on that, despite the fact that things are like rapidly like showing themselves to not be what he thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm sorry. You can continue.
I don't remember if this actually happened before. I think this happened during the tour before they found the eggs in the Stego area. But there is a bit where Wu does visit Hammond, and it's basically Hammond's like, "Ha, yes, this is so great," and Wu's like, "Well, we can make it better. The issue is that these dinosaurs are, funny enough, too realistic." And he has what he calls version, because they have, every time they do a change to the DNA of the dinosaur, they update the version number, similar to like, a software or a video game. When there's a new patch, they'll update the version number of the software. Version 1.0, version 1.1, version 1.2, version 2.0, etc. They do the same thing with the dinosaurs every time they update the genetics. And Wu is offering up the newest one he has, which is called version 4.4. And what he's suggesting to do with that is to essentially make the dinosaurs less realistic, make them slower, make them less aggressive, make them more domesticated, make it to where they're more like zoo creatures as opposed to actual extinct dangerous creatures. And Hammond ain't having any of that. He's like, nah. People want the real thing. And Wu's like, well, that's the thing is, as far as the public is concerned, we control what the real thing is. We are trying to do something for entertainment. We are able to essentially set the narrative, since we are the first people in history to ever see dinosaurs. Since we have created them, we can just do whatever we want with this. And he's trying to do something that admittedly will be a lot safer, will be better, and will actually fix a lot of issues with the genetics of the dinosaurs. Even if there was breeding, I think breeding would also create a major issue that would probably lead to the park failing regardless, but this would fix a lot of the problems, because it would essentially, like he suggests, domesticate the dinosaurs. And Hammond, Hammond is the epitome of arrogance, of hubris of man in this novel. And he's like, nah. He basically says, this is how nature made them. This is how nature intends it to be. This is how I intend it to be. This is how it's going to be. And part of that arrogance is him being like, animals in a zoo, once they adapt to their environment, they become compliant and essentially exist in the zoo. The dinosaurs will do the same, that's a hell of an assumption to say the least, especially given what's going on with the raptors that Hammond is aware of, with the raptor attacks, and why the raptors aren't being integrated into the park yet. So Wu has a solution that will fix a lot of things, and Hammond waves it off because it's not his vision. And of course, he's only thinking about the money. He makes a comment about how this is going to be the perfect park for kids all over the world. Well, rich kids, I mean, actually. So Hammond's such a dick. So, anyways, back to the main cast here on the tour. So Ellie decides that she wants to stay with Harding, and she'll get a ride back with him because she wants to keep seeing what he's seeing, doing what he's doing. And Gennaro decides that he wants to stay with them as well. So the rest of the group, at this point, Lex has been complaining consistently about being hungry, and everyone's starting to get hungry too. So they're like, all right, it's time to head back to the resort. So they're gonna get back in the jeeps and head back. Tour's over for now. Let's get some dinner, and we'll talk about this. We'll figure out what our game plan is later. And then we get to where Nedry's plan kind of starts falling into place for what he's doing, because if you remember, he met with Dodgson from was it Biosyn? Was that the company's name?
Biosyn.
Yeah. So now he's actually starting to kind of get his plan going. Earlier, Muldoon left to go. This is when we get our Muldoon backstory earlier on, and he has this key that allows him access to this locker that has all of the weapons, all of the lethal weapons on the island. So he opens it up and he pulls his favorite Mel Gibson off the shelf and he puts it in the Jeep. And it's a rocket launcher and some missiles. That's a Lethal Weapon joke, by the way. And he leaves it in the Jeep. Just, he's getting his contingency plans ready to go. And he comes back up. And as he was leaving, Nedry made an offhand comment, and he asked Muldoon to bring him back a Coke. But
you can also, I just want to throw out here, we're talking about what great casting we had for Ian Malcolm. Wayne Knight as Nedry is perfect, because you could just hear in his voice "Can you bring me back a Coke?" Like just that little bit of like
the skis,
like of the mocking tone. It's like it's just great.
Yeah, Wayne Knight really killed it as Dennis Nedry. That was really good casting.
We talked about this a little bit before we recorded today. Definitely one of the things about the movie that was better than the book is just like Wayne Knight's fundamental Wayne Knightiness. Like his performance is one of the things that really elevate movie Nedry over the book.
Yeah, because like book Nedry is not really goofy. He's just this fat slob computer tech guy that's in it for himself and for the money. Which, I mean, Nedry in the film is he doesn't come across as a slob as much. He's just, someone who's overweight, and he's definitely in it for himself for the money. But Wayne Knight did add a lot of, and this could have just been Spielberg in general, and Crichton with the script, but at least with the performance that he gave, he added a lot of goofiness to Nedry that I feel like really kind of made the character a little more fleshed out than what we got in the book. So that is like the bit where when he's meeting with Dodgson, and he has the can of whipped cream, and he sprays it into his hand, and he has the little giggle, and he wipes it on the top of his pie or whatever, like that. It's or one of my favorite lines from the movie when Dodgson sits down, which I once again I said this last time, I don't know if I've just been hearing it wrong my whole life and it is Dodgson in the movie, or if they changed his name to Dodson in the movie, because I always heard Dodson. I don't know if that's just my hearing being bad on that, or if they did change it from Dodgson to Dodson, or if it actually is pronounced Dodson and I'm saying Dodgson wrong. Maybe the G is silent. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to say Dodson for the movie right now, just for sake of just my convenience. But that in that same scene, like I said, one of my favorite lines in the movie is when he's like, you be careful, I shouldn't be seen here. And Nedry's just like, Dodson, we've got Dodson over here. And, like, nobody gives a shit because nobody knows who he is. And basically, dude's acting like he's James Bond, and meanwhile he's sitting in the middle of just like, who gives a fuck where, and nobody gives a shit. Like,
yeah, and then then it's the seat, nobody cares. Is just this great moment.
Yeah, so there's like these little character moments that the movie has that the actors, I feel like, were really able to like really chew on and make the performance better than what you would only get from text on a page. So yeah, credit where it's due. Yeah, Wayne Knight did a great job as Dennis Nedry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Nedry, Muldoon goes, he asks for a Coke. Muldoon comes back, doesn't even care to give him the time of day because he's this fat slob. Bleh. And so Nedry's just like, he's doing his thing. It's about that time, and he's like, all right, I guess I'll go get that Coke. And he activates his plan, which is to shut down the security system around the perimeter of the park. And one of the things that they mentioned earlier, talking about the bugs in the system that he's there to fix, is that when that security system around the park goes down, all the security card doors stop functioning, and you can essentially open them all willy-nilly. You have access to the entire park regardless of your clearance level, whatever. And so Nedry did that on purpose. He put, as he called it, a lot of like back doors and fail safes in the security system that he designed so he could do things like that, just in case. He, as he calls it, a Kilroy is here moment. So everybody is either up in the control room or out having their dinner, and he timed this very specifically so that he could walk right into the lab and get the samples for the 15 dinosaurs, put it in the spray can, crank it, get that N2 going, and as he puts it, get into the Jeep, 3 minutes to the dock, drop off the can, 3 minutes back. He'll be back before anybody knows what's going on. He'll fix the system, and everything will be hunky-dory. He'll fix everything he needs to on the weekend. Mission successful. I'm now $1.5 million richer.
Yeah, I just one thing that shocked me was, I don't know, I guess I just expected the embryos to be bigger, so that the fact that they all would fit in that one spray can was kind of surprising to me. I thought it was just to get like, one embryo.
Yeah, it's 2 of each. Which,
yeah, he's somehow shoving 30 embryos into a can.
Yeah, and as I understand it, I think how it works in the book is he unscrews the bottom and it's just, mostly empty space, and he's essentially just dropping them into the can. That's how I understood it as I was reading it. It's not like in the movie where it's this, he unscrews the bottom and there's this container that it's perfectly sized so that he can fit each of the vials into their little spots in the holes on the can. It doesn't, the movie does it seems like it kind of peps that up a little bit, makes it a little more fancy than it is. Because now, I've never thought about this until just now as I was saying this. It's really convenient that Dodgson gives him a can that when he opens it up is perfectly designed to fit those vials in it in the movie. Like, he knew exactly the size of those embryos that he was going to put in the can, and he gave him a can that would perfectly fit them. It's that's it doesn't break my suspension of disbelief of the movie. It's not that big of a deal. It's just something I didn't ever think about until just now, that how convenient it is that it was just the right size for those embryos. But yeah, in the book, I think it's just a hollowed out can that he just shoves them in there and closes it up and cranks the liquid nitrogen, and on he goes.
Yeah.
So he gets into Muldoon's Jeep. He looks and he's like, huh, there's something on the passenger seat that kind of looks like a rocket launcher. Anyways, and just off he goes. But at this point, it's become storming, and it's a tropical storm. The power's out, so everybody on the tour, their Jeeps have stopped moving because they're electric Jeeps that are tied to the cables, underground electric cables, and that's what kind of guides them in the automated tour. They're now essentially stuck out in the rain, and the gates are turned off. That's the problem. But they're just kind of chilling for now in the Jeeps, not wanting to get out because it's a really heavy tropical storm. And so Nedry's whole 3 minutes there, 3 minutes back ain't going to quite go to plan because he can't see shit because of the storm. And if you've seen the movie, you know where this is going. He ends up almost slamming into a concrete barrier, and he realizes he's lost his way somewhere. So he goes out to go look and see where he's at, and he realizes he's by the river, which doesn't help him much at all because the river runs across the entire island. So he starts to head back to his car, and he starts hearing hooting, which at first he thinks is an owl, then he realizes it's not an owl, and when he makes it back to his car, he realizes that he doesn't know what it is, but we know what it is. There's a Dilophosaur in front of the car, and it's not... I don't know how accurate the book is, but I'm going to assume the book is more accurate than the movie. In the movie, the Dilophosauruses are essentially like they're about cat size, small animal. So it's pretty small, and it has the whole like I don't know what my mind's drawing a blank with what you call them, but the little skin flaps that come out the side of its head, and it goes like the hissing thing, and it shoots the venom out. That's how they are in the movie. In the book, they're very similar with like the flaps and the spinning the venom, but the difference being is in the book they're 10 feet tall, which is just insane to me to think about. Like, geez, man, those things were kind of terrifying in the movie, being like, small domesticated animal size. 10 feet tall, standing on its hind legs with these giant flaps and hooting at you. That's fucking terrifying. So Nedry is freaked, as you would be, but trying to get to his car as fast as possible, and it spits its acid on him. First it hits him in the chest, and he touches it, and he's like, what? It spit on me. And then it spits at him again, it hits him in the neck, and he's starting to tingle where it touched him on his neck and where it touched on his hands, and he's like, oh god, this is like acid. And he gets to the door of the car, and he turns to look at it to make sure he knows where it's at before he gets in the car. And at that point, it shoots him right in the eyes, and it blinds him completely because it's now burning his eyes at this point. And boy, in the movie, Nedry's death scene it's I don't want to say off screen because you're staring at the car as it's shaking and he's screaming, but it's, for all intents and purposes, it's kind of off screen because all you get is the implied things that are going on. It's so much more brutal in the book. So he's sitting there, he's burning, he can't see. He's been blinded completely, and he can hear it coming up to him. He can feel its presence getting closer and closer. And once again, this is a 10-foot tall creature, and it slashes his guts open, and he's like he realizes he's holding his intestines as they're spilling out. He falls over, and he feels it grab his head with its mouth and lift him off the ground. And the last thing it says is him realizing what's going on and wishing that it's going to end soon. And that's where the chapter ends. And it's like, oh my god, what? Like, oh, Jesus, that's so much more brutal. Like, oh, man. So that's the end of Dennis Nedry. I feel like Nedry wouldn't have met the fate he met if he would have actually gotten that Coca-Cola that he said he was going to go get, because everybody knows that Coca-Cola saves lives.
Nothing bad has ever happened to a person who drinks Coca-Cola.
No, it's basically a rule of the universe.
It's, yeah. That's why they use it to clean blood off the highway.
Yeah, not because it's
like
acidic.
It's like a magical eraser. It's like it never happened. No, it just you pretty much covered it. It's just pretty brutal, and it's a tough read. It's to a certain extent because you're just like imagining it happening to you, and you're like, oh man, that would really suck.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he goes out in a very agonizing and quite frankly pathetic way. So, R.I.P. Nedry.
As
smoking that Nedry pack.
As much as just a general kind of piece of shit he is, that fate did not quite fit for who he was.
No, it basically fits no one, I would say.
Yeah,
that's a pretty bad way to go.
That's kind of the thing with this entire franchise, be it the books or the movies, is everyone's death is kind of something they didn't really deserve, unless the person dying is extremely, extremely evil. And there is somebody who fits this that I will talk about in the final episode we cover for this, because it's at the end of the book. There is somebody who fits that, and I think they got their just desserts. No pun intended. So yeah, Nedry got a real bad lay of it.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the tour group. Tim's wearing night vision goggles. So the group is once again split up. It's Malcolm and Grant in the back car, and Regis, Tim, and Lex in the front car. And Tim's got these night vision goggles that were in the car that Regis used to essentially convince him to sit up there instead of trying to bother Malcolm and Grant. And he's looking around for the T-Rex, just like, I wonder if I'll be able to see. Because at this point, they're once again back by the T-Rex enclosure. And he's trying to find it. He's like, I wonder if its eyes will glow in the night vision goggles. And he sees it, and it is just up against the fence, just staring at them. And like, wow, man, just imagine that. You're just looking around, like, oh, I wonder if I'll see the T-Rex. And then you see what you think is like maybe it, and your eyes just go up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And there it is, and you see its eyes, and it's just looking right at the cars, and you're just like, oh, is it holding the fence? It's holding the fence, and it's not shocking it. Oh my god, it's not shocking it. Like, man.
Yeah, that would be incredibly terrifying.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, he's kind of like relaying this information. Oh, actually, shoot. I'm sorry. There's something I actually completely forgot about, and we both forgot about. Back up a little bit, just a little smidge bit. So the boat that you mentioned earlier that was docking and taking things off. This was, I think, before Nedry shut the system down, and the storms. Yeah, it was, because this is when the storm was coming. They're like, hey, the storm's getting bad. We need to go, otherwise, the ship's gonna crash. It's gonna be a lot of a mess, and it's horrible. We can't get everything off in time. We're just gonna have to come back in 2 weeks. And of course, Hammond stamps his feet, and he's like, "No, I need that equipment for the lab now. I need it now." And Arnold is the one that's just like, "Hey, if you make them stay, not only are you gonna lose the equipment to the storm, you're gonna lose the boat, and you're gonna have to pay to salvage the boat and salvage the equipment and repair the dock, and we're not going to be able to get any shipments in that time period that it's under repairs. It's not worth it." And so Hammond reluctantly is just like, fine, let him go. So Arnold gives them the okay, and the ship leaves before they can dock, so they cannot worry about the storm. Meanwhile, as they're making their way back to the resort, the tour group, the kids are like waving and like freaking out in the front car. And Grant's like, oh, man, something's going on. So he gets on the radio, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, look on the boat. And he pulls out his binoculars, and he's looking, and Lex is like, look to the side. And it's hard to see, but he eventually makes out 2 baby velociraptors on the boat as it's leaving in the distance, just playing around. They're just having a little games, just playing around on the boat. So, there's 2 guaranteed velociraptors that are on their way off the island, and Grant and Malcolm are like, "Oh God, we need to radio back to the control system, let them know so they can let the boat crew know, because this is bad. We can't let them get off the island." Which, something to note as well that I don't think we talked about, is one of the things that Wu put in place, and one of the reasons why he's like, there's no way dinosaurs could get off the island, and even if they could, I have a contingency plan for that, but they won't. But I have a contingency plan, but they won't. Is that he created them to only be able to survive in the atmosphere of Isla Nublar. If they left the island, this goes back to the whole like lysine dependence that they have. They wouldn't get what they need, and they would essentially go into a coma after 12 hours and die. So they are not able to survive outside of the island genetically. However, we already know that compies have been thriving in Costa Rica that got off the island, so that may work for the dinosaurs that Wu created, but that's probably not true for the dinosaurs that were naturally born on the island. And so there's a possibility that those raptors on the boat aren't going to have that lysine deficiency that's going to kill them in 12 to 18 hours. So
yeah, it's definitely, you can start to feel like a growing sense of doom as the plot carries along, and that's one of those moments where you're like, oh crap. Yeah. I don't know. Last time when we first read this, or I guess listened to the audio book years ago, I remember thinking like, oh wow, this is bad. But there's just something about it, reading it this time, that is just really sinking in. It's like how incredibly screwed they are, and by proxy, how bad this is for the entire world. You know, when you really sit and think about it.
Yep, and it's one of those things to where it's like, you know, the best laid plans. You know, you can sit there and plan on this and think that you have everything down to a science, and that you have every contingency covered. There's no loopholes, and if there are loopholes, you have more than enough time to fix them, and there's no way that anything can go wrong, and you've done this perfectly. But as Malcolm says, life finds a way.
Yeah, that was a great moment in the book too.
So yeah, that's something I needed to actually cover and not forget to cover before going into the T-Rex incident. So yeah, the wire, the security system's off, the fences are down, and the T-Rex has realized this. Also, something important to note is before he actually saw the T-Rex, Tim heard something, looked, and caught a glimpse of something running in between the cars, but he couldn't tell what it was. Grant asked him if he saw what it was, because Grant heard it and felt it too, but he can't see because he doesn't have night vision goggles. But unfortunately, Tim didn't get a good enough look at it. I'm pretty confident I know what it is, off of just one, intuition, and two, what I do remember. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I'll not say anything for now, but I'm pretty sure I know what it is. And so then he sees the T-Rex, and the T-Rex realizes the fences are not working and decides, I don't need no fences anymore, and kicks that shit down. So boom, the T-Rex is now officially broken containment, and it's staring at the cars. And
yeah, that's just such an incredibly cool moment.
Yeah.
Just the visual of the T-Rex just holding onto the cage, and then it kind of like slowly realizes that it can break free. That's just so cool.
Yeah, it's another one of those things, kind of like with the introduction of the dinosaurs in the book compared to the movie, where like the T-Rex scene in the book compared to the movie, it's different, and they both do what they're trying to do perfectly. In the book, it's all about like just this slowly building tension, and then once the T-Rex is out, it's this big just explosion of terror, and just it's absolutely thrilling, and it's so great. And in the movie, it's kind of similar. You don't get as much of that tension building. You do get some of it with the iconic the stomping and the cup of water rumbling and rippling as the stomps happen. Like that is just as good, in my opinion, for the movie as Tim staring at the dinosaur with the night vision goggles is for the book. So it's a little different.
Well, it's just one of those things that it's just, you know, when with the movie being kind of a more visually oriented medium, it kind of helps. It gives it a more visual It's an easier way to visually convey that versus what they would have to spend like millions on just doing the CGI for that one shot, you know.
And even then, with the thing we have with the book is we're at this point we're in Tim's perspective, because this book shifts perspectives. It can do it from paragraph to paragraph, and we're witnessing this through Tim's eyes. So we're seeing what he's thinking, what he's feeling as he's staring at this T-Rex, and there's a lot of awe in it, and also a little bit of fear because of it, like looking at them and him realizing the fences are off, and it all kind of crescendos with his fear and later on when the perspective shifts, Grant's fear as the T-Rex is causing its little rampage. But we can't really get that same thing. That doesn't translate as well to movies. So the scene with the glass of water and rippling with the stomps, that does just as well in the movie to convey that tension and that fear and that just building suspense, as it does it in a way that works for the movie that you can't do like you can in a book, with being inside the character's head and feeling that fear with them as you are experiencing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just another mark of just the book does it phenomenally. The movie does it a little different, but just as phenomenally. But as a whole, the T-Rex incident is a lot more bombastic and shorter in the movie. It basically comes in to have its spectacle, get its point across, and move on to the next scene. That's just how movies go. You have to, pacing is a thing, runtime is a thing. Books don't really have to deal with that as much. So we're able to get a lot more of what's kind of happening, a lot more freneticism, and a lot more just general action in the book, which fits the book and how the movie did it fit the movie. It's just, the movie's fantastic. I can't say enough good things about the movie, and that's one of the most iconic, and rightfully so, like one of the best scenes in the movie. Everybody knows the T-Rex scene, when it stops out and it just roars, and you get that iconic T-Rex roar. The movie does it so well. But we're not talking about I should stop talking about the movie. So yeah, it breaks the fence, and it immediately goes for their car, and oh god. Regis at this point has pissed himself, gets out, and sprints into the forest. So and Lex is just freaking out and crying. He laughed us, over and over. And Tim's trying to get her to quiet and shut the door that he left open. So he has to run out and shut the door, then come back and run in. And now like the T-Rex is coming, and it just starts just fucking beating that car up. It rips the spare tire off the back. It busts the windows. It's like stomping on it. It like comes down. They look over and he sees its eye staring into the window of the car through the windshield, and it's like knocking them around. He gets his goggles knocked off. Lex has been knocked unconscious and she's bleeding on the side of her head. He's a little banged up too. He's trying to talk to Grant on the radio because Grant's trying to what's going on, you guys okay? And he's trying to keep in contact with Grant, and then it comes and it bites the windshield. It's like it's staring at him, and it bites the front frame of the car as it's trying to get at him, and he feels its hot breath, and like the saliva falls onto him, and it's trying to get him, but it can't because the car's in the way, and it also cut its mouth a little bit on the metal frame, and he's like, oh wow, it can't get to me. And it's so great at just framing this scene and just having all of this happen, just building on it, and it's such a well-written scene. It conveys the action perfectly, and like Tim is just helpless sitting in this car while the T-Rex is just trying to get at them. And then what ends up happening is it picks up the car with its mouth, and the door falls open, and Lex falls out of the car into the mud, but Tim is still in the car, and it's just rocking the car around, and it just throws the car out, and the last thing Tim realizes is he's hurtling through the air in the car before he loses consciousness. It's like, man, what a cool scene.
Yeah, this is I would say it's probably one of the high points of the book. I mean, there's the whole thing is very good, but this is much like the movie. This is and I know we shouldn't necessarily do that all the time, but this is definitely one of like the most memorable sequences of the book.
Yeah, for me, if I had to pick 3 scenes that I felt were the most memorable in the book, it's the T-Rex attack, the aviary, and the climax in the resort with the raptors. Those are my 3. I'm obviously not going to go into details of the other 2 yet because we're not there yet. My favorite is the raptors in the resort at the climax of the novel. It's my favorite part of the book. It's incredible. I love it. But those 3 scenes, I would say, are my personal my biggest highlights of the book. Honorable mention goes to the lakeside, going to the boathouse.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But anyways, the storm has been going so hard, and Grant and Malcolm in the back car have no idea what's happening. And there's a flash of lightning, and Grant's like, "Is the car gone?" And at first he thinks, no, it's just the T-Rex that's standing in between them and the 2 cars, and there's no way the car is actually gone. And then there's another flash of lightning, and he's like, oh no, the car's gone. And they hear Lex screaming, and they see the T-Rex go down, and it looks like it's feeding on something. And Malcolm's like, oh god, was that the girl? And they're just like, they're freaking out, thinking that it might be Lex, and he's like, I think it was. And so then the T-Rex comes and looks at them, and now it's like, oh, I got this one car taken care of, now let's look at the other. And Malcolm's like, it's times like this where you start to feel like things that exist should stay exist. It's times like these where you think that something that's extinct should stay extinct, huh? And Grant's like, yes, absolutely. And then what does Malcolm do? He gets out and runs. And it turns out
which it's a lot more forgivable in his instance than Regis, because at this point they have good reason to believe that the kids are dead.
Yeah. And it turns out that trying to outrun a 20-30 foot creature is not really something you can do. So the Rex ends up really quickly closing the gap between him and Malcolm and just hits him with its head, and he just goes flying. And that's the last we see of Malcolm for now, as of our reading for today. That's the last we see of Malcolm for now. It's not the last of Malcolm yet. But as it stands, he is now officially out of the scene. Grant, at this point, has also gotten out of the car, but he's frozen in fear as the T-Rex looks back in his direction and starts coming back to the car. Grant can't move. He's thinking, this is it, I'm about to get eaten by a T-Rex, and he's completely frozen with fear. But the strangest thing happens. The T-Rex is looking for him, but it can't find him. And it starts hitting the car around. It's just barely missing him. And he realizes that their eyesight is based more on finding movement than it is on actual vision. And this is something that it's one of those plot holes that people pick out of the movie. How does Grant know not to move in the movie? And the T-Rex won't see you if you don't move, because when he grabs Lex, and he's like, don't move, it won't see you. And it comes all the way right up to him, and it snorts, and it blows his hat off. And it's a really great scene. It's super tense. But it is one of those things where a lot of people are like, it's a plot hole. How does Grant not know? Or how does Grant know that if you don't move, the T-Rex won't see you? And that's the answer you get in the book. That's how Grant knew in the book, at least, is because he was so frozen with fear that he stumbled into knowing that if you don't move, it won't be able to tell where you're at, because a lot of their hunting is based on movement. And he realizes that the T-Rex knows that he's somewhere, and it's trying to get him to move so it can find him. So it roars in his direction, it's stomping about, it's hitting the car, but he realizes this, so now he's doing everything in his power not to move so that the T-Rex can't find him. And so in a bout of frustration, the T-Rex just smacks the shit out of the car and takes Grant with it. So Grant goes flying and hits the ground and gets knocked unconscious. And that's all for Grant for today. That's all for Malcolm. That's all for Tim and Lex. That's all for Regis. We're almost done.
I was about to say that's all for us, but yeah, you're right. There is one last sequence with Hammond.
And also Ellie and Harding.
Oh, okay, never. Well, I guess them too.
Yeah. So, you might be wondering, well, what's Ellie Sattler and Dr. Harding and Gennaro been doing at this point in time? And So they eventually finish up their business and they're heading back to the resort as well. They imagine they don't know anything's wrong other than this storm's probably causing some problems, so it's not that big of a deal. There's a fallen tree that's blocking the road, so they can't get back the way that they came. And Harding's like, it's not that big of a deal. There's also the maintenance road we can take. It takes longer, but we'll get back to it anyways. It'll take about 40 minutes, but it's whatever. So they start heading down that way, and they have to stop at one point to let some dinosaurs pass. They don't seem to notice them because something that Harding points out is, they tend to only really notice things that are in movement. So we get another kind of reaffirmation of that idea that Grant just found out. And so they keep going after the dinosaurs pass, and then they have to stop again, and they see a bunch of compies on the road. And Harding's like, that's kind of odd that they're out, because they're normally when it's storming, they'll just like hide up in the trees until the weather passes, or maybe was it because it's storming or because it's nighttime? I think it's because it's nighttime actually.
Yeah, it was. They go to the tree at night.
Yeah, so then he's like, they normally go in the trees at night, and she's like, well, they're scavengers. They probably only do this if they're hunting something that's dying or dead. And Harding's like, yeah, I agree. She's like, let's follow the compies and see where they're going. He's like, sure, let's do it. So they go and they're following the compies, and that's where we're going to leave them for now. Gennaro, I guess, is just kind of there. He doesn't have a word to say in this entire... He might as well not be there right now because it doesn't even mention him. And then the last thing we're going to cover today is another meeting between John Hammond and Dr. Wu. They're chilling in his bungalow. They've just eaten dinner, and Hammond is doing his kind of power play thing again, to where it doesn't matter what Wu's saying, he's going to override him because he's a petulant little child, and he's acting like he's nicer than he is, and using ice cream as like some sort of like mediator for it. You gotta try the ginger ice cream, it's to die for. Yeah. So this is just another occurrence of just seeing just how much of a scummy businessman that John Hammond is. He's talking about how one of the reasons why he's doing this the way that he's doing it with an island 100 miles off the coast of Costa Rica is because of essentially avoiding bureaucracy. It's like, if you have to do all of these things for like genetics or research or whatever, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of things that just kind of really hold it up. And you see all the time where if someone creates a medicine and they decide they want to sell it for $1,500 or whatever, they want to try and set the price, and the government, the big bad government's like, oh no, I don't want you to set this price this much, so I'm going to make it harder for you to get your patents. And it mucks up the whole system for them, and so now you don't really have the freedom to control your product that you created the way that you want it to. You have to go through these regulators.
I just need to throw out here that he talks about recouping R&D expenses, but that underplays how a lot of current pioneering medicines that are being done or looked into right now are they're getting massive grants from the government as part of their research. So his whole bit about like, but they're not letting us recoup our R&D costs just is yet another part of his thing that it's a very self-serving and not necessarily very grounded in reality argument here.
Yeah, and so his whole thing is, because I am doing this for entertainment, I'm not in the medical industry, I am in the entertainment industry, and with entertainment, those conniving government regulators can't do shit about this. I can set the price that I want, and you know what? That's actually going to make it more alluring. If I make this $5,000 a day, that's going to encourage people to come. It's not going to dissuade them. And you know how those rich Americans and those rich Japanese people are. And something I thought about too while he was talking about this. I think this book takes place in '89. So I'm assuming that's when the Japanese giant economic bubble was still going on.
I think the economic downturn started in like the early maybe 1990.
Yeah.
Maybe like 90, 91, somewhere in there.
Because he makes a comment saying that the Japanese have a lot more money than the Americans, And I just, my everything always goes back to Yakuza. My brain just immediately flashed back to Yakuza 0, which takes place in '88 during that giant economic bubble. And Kiryu, one of the characters you play as, you do a real estate business, and you're making billions upon billions of yen just doing that. And I'm just thinking about that, just like yeah, that Japanese economic bubble was pretty nuts in the '80s, wasn't it? So yeah, it makes sense that the Japanese have more money.
Kiryu rocking up to Jurassic Park with a briefcase full of cash.
Yeah.
I'll make an offer in cash.
Even the homeless.
Buys the island.
Even the homeless people are able to afford to go to Jurassic Park in Japan.
That's actually how Kiryu lost his money in between Zero and Kiwami. He spent it all like a pre-sale of tickets. He was going to turn around and flip, but after InGen went bankrupt, he wasn't able to do anything with that.
Yeah, it turns out that the major shareholder in InGen was Kazuma Kiryu, and when they went under, so did he. But anyways, it's more of showing just that how Hammond really only cares about the money. Like, he may like dinosaurs, but I think he cares more about what these dinosaurs will do for him than he does about the dinosaurs themselves, about the science of it, about the marvel of it. And earlier he did talk about how he's like, I may actually be in this chapter, how he's like, oh, my one regret is that I probably won't live long enough to see the faces of these kids smile in delight as they see the dinosaurs. I'm calling bullshit, dude. You don't care about the smiling faces of children. You care about the wallets of their parents that are paying for these tickets. Like, that's what he cares about. His regret is that he won't live to see the true, as he projected it, $20 billion a year profits that he feels like is a conservative estimate on what Jurassic Park is going to bring in. He's not going to be able to get the long-term benefits of this park, the financial benefits. He might see some of it, but he'll probably die within the next decade or so, maybe less if his health declines or he gets a disease or something. That's what he cares about. It's all about the money. He doesn't care about the kids. If he would have cared about the kids, he wouldn't have made that comment. Only the rich kids will be able to come here. So no, if he cared about the kids and their wonder of dinosaurs, he'd make it affordable for like even middle class families. So fuck John Hammond. He doesn't care about that. What an asshole.
Yeah. And in addition to that, also when he talks about. Never mind. We don't necessarily have to run down every instance of hypocrisy by John Hammond. But basically, if he ever says anything, it is either false, hypocritical, but in every case, self-serving.
Yeah. So that's kind of like where kind of we leave off with Hammond. Hammond is having his little meeting with Wu, and he's basically just like, oh, it's all about the money, and we're doing this to go around the government. Meanwhile, nobody can find Nedry in the control center, so they're just trying to like deal with that can of worms. Somebody mentions that they saw him heading towards the garage, and Muldoon, who had earlier went to try and go to his Jeep to go rescue the people on the tour, realizes the Jeep is gone. He now realizes that it was Nedry that probably took the Jeep, so he's like, oh no. So now they're all freaking out because because Arnold understands that it's going to take hours for him to figure out how to undo the tangle of spaghetti code that Nedry made here. That Nedry could have fixed in minutes, but he's dead now, so oops. Not that they know that yet, but yeah, that's kind of where we leave off. It's we got the build up of the dinosaurs, and now everything has just started to collapse. We've had a couple. I think it's just a casualty so far. We've had our first casualty with Dennis Nedry, and the fence is broken. There's raptors about that are unaccounted for. The T-Rex is loose. And the fates of Tim and Lex are up in the air, as well as Malcolm and Grant. So, where do we go from here?
I think that about gets us, and actually quite a nice place to leave off. A lot of those subplots kind of in the air.
Yeah, I did it this time. This was me.
Yes, Dusty she deserves all the credit for the big cliffhanger here.
Haha. Yeah, I think that'll about do us for Jurassic Park this week. As I've said many times already, I love this book. It's so good. Everybody should read this book. It's fantastic. Great little science fiction novel. It's not little. It's pretty big.
No, it's pretty big, but I very much concur. I think anybody that likes the book or that liked the movie should try the book, and I don't know. I think in terms of just raw enjoyment, it's my favorite so far.
Yeah, it is very much a ride. If you enjoy the movie, if you think the movie has these nice like thrills and chills and suspenseful moments, the book has them in spades as well. So yeah, they'll do it for us this week. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, my name's Dusty,
and I'm Daniel,
and they'll do it for us today for the Sad Boys Book Club. So we'll see you guys next week.
All right, see you then.